Welcome csc102 to PP01, my first PowerPoint. This is the Google Slides version. Just like we use Sheets for Excel, we use Docs for Word, we're going to be using Google Slides in place of PowerPoint for this exercise. This is an example of the one we do for PowerPoint. It's just a PDF, so it's static, it's not the actual PowerPoint. And again, the reason we do this is just to kind of work with making kind of a custom background here, or a custom image that's in the back that has like a neutral background on it. We're going to just put an image behind here. Eventually we're going to use a background image, but since we have a little more control over images, we'll just put an image and put it in the back. We're just going to make a text box, or we'll modify our existing text box just to give it a fill color, change the text to white, put a little drop shadow, put our name there, and then on this one we're just going to use the same kind of heading up here like we used on our title page. We're going to make a numbered list, and we're not going to do this blurred edge. We may do something with kind of a light blue background like that, and we might put like black text on it so it's a little bit easier to read. And then we're just going to put a transition and some animations on these three things. So just to give you an example, this is one I just kind of worked on just to kind of practice a little bit. So I haven't worked on Google Slides very much. So I'm going to go on to the first slide here and just hit present. This is what it looks like when it's finished. And there's just the title slide. Then I hit my space bar and it does a transition. It just kind of faded out and faded in. And now it says important PowerPoint rules. And then when I hit my space bar, it'll do the first paragraph or the first number. And then it'll do the second number, and then the third number. And I know in the sample I used blue, but it looked hard to read on here, so I might stick with black on here. So that's all we're going to do. This won't take long at all. Just some very basic things in PowerPoint without using a theme. So I'm going to escape out of here since I'm already in. And if you weren't in this for whatever reason, if you're going to Google Sheets for the first time, all that you have to do, or Google Slides for the first time, all that you have to do is just go and find Google Slides, and we're just going to make a new blank presentation. And this is kind of the way it starts when you're in PowerPoint as well. Now what we're going to do first is put an image on the background here. Now we can go search for a background image. We can just put a light background color as well. I'll just mess around with an image just to see how it works. And the reason I'm going to actually insert an image rather than changing the background, because if you right click on here, you can change the background, and you can just change the background color, use something very light, or even do a custom color, or you can even choose an image. You can choose an image, but they don't have images in here, so you either have to go search them out. And the problem is if they're too harsh, you can't reduce the opacity. So one way to do that is what I'm going to do right now. I'm just going to go in here and say insert image, this little thing here with the mountains. I'll just search the web. And over here, I'll just search for something like a parchment background. And you could scroll through these here. I'll do one that looks a little too dark. I'll click on this and I'll say insert, and I'll wait a little bit, and there it is. And I'll stretch it out so it fits my presentation area. Now it's too dark right now for text over top of it. And what I can do is, if you don't see anywhere that says reduce the opacity, if you click on here, go to format options, and they'll show up over here. And it's actually, I believe, under adjustments. They have transparency. And maybe I'll take it over to like 40%. Now 40% transparency is 60% opacity. So if you just wanted to take it over to 50 and see what that looks like, that might work. And depending on what image you use, you might have to use more or less. So I'm going to use a little bit more here. I'm at about 65. So I'm going to stay with that because I think that looks okay. I don't want it too harsh. I want nice contrast. And that's all I'm going to do with the background. And I'm going to make sure it's in the back. So if you want to reorder so that you make sure this is behind everything, if you just right click on the image, they have something called order, and just make sure you send to back. And this should look nice and black. And then it's kind of behind everything. And I'm not sure if you can lock it or not. I'll have to check that out when I do more with Google Slides. But I'm going to click this box here. This is a kind of a placeholder box, meaning if you click in here, the stuff goes away, the text goes away until you type. And I'm going to say my first PowerPoint. My first PowerPoint. And on the example, I use Georgia. I think in here I'm going to try out this Roboto slab. I like that. They have different weights of it. If you hover over here, and I'll just use the extra bold, and it's at 52, I might take it up to like 58. And I'm going to center it up and down. And to do that, there's nothing here about center, but because of this format options box, if you use these three dots here, then you could use the center align, And if you click on here, they have horizontal alignment and they have up and down. So I'm going to center it up and down, and I'm eventually going to make it white, but what I'll do first is I'll go to the paint bucket and I'm going to choose a blue color, and I'm just going to choose this third one from the bottom here. I'm going to use that, and I'll click on that, and that colors the whole box that blue color. Now I still have my text highlighted, so I'm going to make that white. Now to make your text white, you use the A tool here and just make sure it's white, and then it has a nice pop to it. And if you want to put a border on this thing, they have the pen tool here, or this border color. It's like a pencil. You could just make it black, and they have a thickness right here. You could make it 2 or 3. I'll just make it 3, and that's kind of similar to the sample if you click off of it. And I'm just going to shorten this a little bit. Now remember, because it's already centered vertically, if you make the box thinner, it'll stay in the middle. And I'm going to put a drop shadow on it. So over here I have drop shadow. So there's a drop shadow there, even though you can't see it. That's because there's not much distance on it. Drop shadows kind of use 3 things. They use a distance, meaning how far away the shadow is, and you don't want to do too much of this. And they do blur, which is how soft the shadow is, and they do the angle, and usually the angle is going to be like 45. It's going to be down and over to the right. So if you start with the angle here and you make sure that you go down to like 45, now you're not going to see anything, I don't think, just yet. You actually have to increase the distance. So I'm going to take the distance up to like maybe like 15. So distance 15, angle 45, and the blur radius I think somewhere around 10. Should be fine. You don't want to do too much of this, and leave transparency right in the middle. People try to make these things too dark, and they don't look good when they're too dark. They're too contrasty. So actually right in the middle is probably fine. Right around 50 is probably fine. Less is more when it comes to this. So that's my drop shadow. If you click off it, you can see how it looks, and that looks pretty good. And then all I'm going to do is just put my name here, and I'll highlight it. I'll put it in like Calibri, and I'll put it up to maybe like 30. I'll just go 2 clicks up to 30. Maybe I'll use the same blue color that I have. So again, if you don't see the color, you got to click on the dots here. And I'll use that third blue for here. And maybe I'll make it bold so it stands out because it's on my title page. I said title page. This is my title slide. So that's my title slide. And usually what comes next is something with some bullet items or numbered items. And that's what we're going to do next. And if you hit this plus sign here, it's just going to make a new slide. And it's not going to be just like this. It's actually going to be a content slide. So if I hit plus, it's doing one that has a title at the top, and then it has content here, and we're going to make these bullet items. Now, before we do anything, we can go here and we can copy this thing. We could just copy this. I could do Control-C or Command-C if I'm on a Mac. I could copy that background image, and I could go here, back to this slide, and I'll just paste it. And if you're not sure if it's behind everything, just right-click right on the image and make sure you go to Order and do Send to Back. Send to Back. And it should make this stuff look a little blacker if it's in the back. Another thing I could borrow from this, because we're going to do this top here, you can see how this one has the same kind of heading look as that. So instead of doing that all over, here's a little shortcut. We can go here. Now we could just click right on this box, and we can use the paint roller. That's like the format painter in Microsoft products, which looks like a paintbrush. This looks like a paint roller, so I'm just going to click once here. That will copy the formatting from here. And then I'm going to go onto this slide, and then I'm just going to click right here. And it puts the same formatting on that box, and I'm going to say important PowerPoint rule, even though we're using slides. And it's way too big right now, so I'm going to highlight all this text, and it's at 28. And if you don't want to use the plus or minus, if you just click where the 28 is, I'm going to take it down to maybe like 24. Wait, that looks too small. About 30. I'm not sure what it was. I think it was showing me the wrong number there, but somewhere around 30. Let's go up a little bit more. We'll make it like 36. And then if we want to make sure it's centered up and down, even though we borrowed that property, let's make sure that it is. So I'm going to use my dots here and make sure it's centered vertically. Now that looks pretty good. And yeah, that's good. So I'm going to leave that like that. I might bring this down just a little bit. And what we're going to do here is make a numbered list, and we've done that already with Word and stuff. So we just have to click here and click on the 1. And remember, when you make a numbered list, they're separate paragraphs. And the first thing I'm going to put in here is, do not ever read PowerPoint slides word for word. I don't know if I could copy that. Oh, wait, maybe I could copy this. I'll just copy it right off of here, then I don't have to type it. And I'll go here and I'll paste that, and I'll backspace just to make sure it's reading it as one paragraph here. Oh, I guess it's putting dashes in here. That wasn't really a time saver. And we could certainly break this at a different point And if you ever broke it, you want to do a shift return. It defeats the purpose, and then maybe you want to say of using PowerPoint. You could do shift enter. That'll keep it from being a new paragraph, because when you hit enter, it'll make a new number. So I'm going to hit a number here, and I'll see what it says. It says, do not use annoying animations or sounds. Now, I don't want to get dashes. It seems like it was getting dashes out of there, so I'll just type it. And there's my second one. And again, we're going to fix the size and the spacing on here. And my last one, I think, was just something like, do not use Comic Sans font ever. And I could even highlight this and put it in the Comic Sans font just to introduce what that is. And I can make it bold. All right, so we're going to maybe make this like a nice blue color. And I could use the same blue color that we've been using. And I'll go up a little bit. And I'll just hit the plus button to make it bigger. And maybe 24 point, I think, is good. See, if I change all the font right now, it's going to take my Comic Sans out. But I'm going to put it back to Calibri. And then I'll put this back to Comic Sans, because that was in the highlights. So I'll put that back to Comic Sans. And that looks pretty good. Now, except some things are on the wrong line here. So let me backspace this and move that up. And I could even break this on a line. I could do a shift return or a shift enter. And if I want to put space in between these, I can highlight these. Now, what I found before is if you go to spacing, this is line spacing, and it seems like it likes you to use this first and then use custom. Because when the last time I did it, it gave me a problem. So I'm going to do add space after list item. So after the list item, it's going to add space. So I'm going to highlight that and do that first. And it just does like a default amount of like 10. Then if you want to change it, then you could go to line spacing and go to custom. And there it says 10, and change this to like 16. And then hit apply. And then it adds a little more space there. So that looks a little bit better. And you can even center this up and down if you want, the whole box. Remember, that's the alignment thing here. You could center it up and down. And then another thing we can do is go to text fitting over here. I'm going to close this and go to text fitting. Let's give it a background color first. So I'll use the paint bucket, and you could use a light blue, but what's actually better is probably to use the same blue and then go back here and then go to custom, so that you're kind of changing the transparency of that same blue. So now I'm using that blue, and it's in that same family of blue, and I'm just going to make it real light down here. And I'll hit OK and see how that looks. Now, it takes away from the contrast a little bit, so this might even be better in this one, making it black. And that would be just going to these dots again. And by the way, if you're wondering why there's no font showing up there, that's because I have Comic Sans and Calibri in here. And if you have multiple fonts in your selection, it won't show anything. It'll be blank. So I'm just going to go and make that black, because I think that will look better. I think that'll pop on the background a little bit better. And on the PowerPoint version, we put a soft edge on that, a blurred edge. We can't do that in Google Slides, at least not that I'm aware of, so I'm not even going to bother doing that. But we should pull this away from the edge. It's a little close to the edge over here. So we're going to click on the box again, and that's where I said there's padding. Padding is the space in between a box or inside a box, kind of like cell padding if you had cells in Excel. That's the padding in there. So we're just going to increase that to like 0.2. And it's 0.2 inches. So remember, 0.25 is a quarter inch. So this is a little less than that. And that looks a little bit better. And that's pretty much what we want. That's what we want visually. We want that as our title slide. We want that as our second slide. Again, nothing too exciting here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a transition, and then we're going to do animations. We're going to do animations of these 3 paragraphs, and we're going to do a transition between the 2 slides. Now, this is real easy because we're just going to select that first slide, and then we'll go to transition, and then we can choose what kind of transition. So I'll choose fade, because I like fade because it's nice and simple. There's fade, and just say apply to all slides. And then if I present, if I click on present up here, all that's going to happen is when I hit my space bar, it's going to fade and go to the next slide. That's it. That's all we did. So I'll hit escape to get out of here. And then what I'll do is on this slide is, and I'm going to highlight these paragraphs, and under object animations, I'm just going to say add animation. And I'm going to highlight all 3 paragraphs because I want these to be animated one at a time. Now I think in Word, we actually have to highlight one at a time, unless I've been missing something all these years. But if we highlight all 3 here, we can hit add animation. Now this is different than a transition. Transitions are between the slides. Animation is within the slide. And you can animate all kinds of things, but we're just going to have these appear. That's all we're going to do. So we're going to hit add animation. And it's just using a fade. It's using a fade in. And if we check by paragraph, then it'll do one paragraph at a time. So we have to make sure that we click that, and then that's it. And if you want to play it, you can play it and see what it looks like and hit your space bar, space, space, space. And then when you stop it, if you want to just present again, just to make sure everything looks okay, go back to the front, because I think I was on the second slide. So there's my first slide. I'll hit my space bar. There's the transition. There's my second slide. And there's my first paragraph, second paragraph, third paragraph. And I see I have these, I didn't even realize that all these dashes were in here. That came from copying it from the PDF, so don't do that. Just type it. There we go. There's my dashes are gone. And this assignment's done. So this is PP01. So make sure you go and save this as PP01 and just call it my first PowerPoint, or just call it my first PP is fine, and just put like an underscore or a dash and just put your last name, first initial. And then when you want to share it, you just have to go here to share and get shareable link and copy the link, and then go back to coursework and look for unit 11, at least for spring 2020. There's unit 11, my first PowerPoint. And remember, if you're doing this in Google Slides, you don't have to upload anything. All you're going to do is add comment, insert a link, paste your shareable link, make sure you change this to new window, hit OK, and then save it, and then I'll have it. And that's all you have to do. I'll see your comment in there, and that's all you have to do for PP01, my first PowerPoint using Google Slides.